What on earth? After finishing a business trip, I came home for the first time in 2 years. Andrew should have had the day off today. Excited to see him after such a long time, my heart was racing. But as soon as I opened the door to our house, a strange smell wafted through the air, and my excitement quickly faded. At the same time, an indescribable sense of unease hit me. I felt like something terrible had happened. Andrew! I called out Andrew's name while searching all over the house. But he was nowhere to be found. There's only one place left. I took a deep breath and slowly opened the bedroom door. Andrew! What is this? Sure enough, Andrew was there, but his appearance had completely changed from the Andrew I knew. My name is Sally Smith. I'm 32 years old. Right after graduating from college, I took a job as a salesperson at an advertising company far from my hometown. To be honest, I hadn't always dreamed of working in advertising. However, a lecture I attended in college sparked my interest in it. How to create ads that attract people. What elements make an ad appealing? Before I knew it, I was completely engrossed in advertising and design. With job hunting on the horizon, I naturally studied hard to enter the advertising industry. As a result, I successfully landed a job at the company I had set my sights on. I still remember how happy I was. It was sad to have to leave my hometown, but my heart was racing because I had achieved my dream. However, once I started working, I realized it was much harder than I had anticipated. I wasn't underestimating it. But reality and imagination turned out to be quite different. From going out to meet clients to creating documents, communicating with people at sales visits, and more. There were many fun aspects, but the overtime, working on weekends, and business trips were tough. The kindness of all the employees was a saving grace, I think. Eventually, I began to wonder if this was really what I wanted to do. But then, a presence appeared that supported me through those times. It was about 2 years after I had started working. I attended a drinking party invited by a coworker but couldn't fit into the conversation and was drinking quietly by myself when a man approached me. Are you okay? Drinking alone. Yes, I'm fine. This man was Andrew, who would later become my husband. Andrew had noticed me drinking alone and kindly came over to talk. You looked a bit lonely. Would you like to join me for a drink? Absolutely. At my reply, Andrew smiled kindly. As we talked more, it turned out that Andrew was also in sales. From then on, our conversation, filled with complaints about work, blossomed, and we hit it off right away. We exchanged contact information and made plans to go out for dinner together. Never would I have imagined that I'd get along so well with someone of the opposite sex at a casual drinking party. Let alone meet my future husband. It still feels almost miraculous to me. A week later, the day came for Andrew and me to meet alone. Honestly, I was feeling a bit gloomy. After all, the previous occasion was just a drunken moment. Could we really have a good conversation sober? With a bit of anxiety, I met up with Andrew. We entered the restaurant he had reserved. In the end, my worries were unfounded, and we had a great time. Andrew was truly a gentleman, interesting to talk to. He was exactly my idea of an ideal man. Sally, you're such a wonderful person. Oh, stop it. Wonderful, really? He would casually throw out compliments that most people would hesitate to say directly. Before I knew it, I had started to think of Andrew more seriously. After that, Andrew and I started seeing each other more frequently, and by our third date, he confessed his feelings to me, and we became a couple. Time spent with Andrew was truly happy. He made it possible for me to manage my difficult job. Are you okay? Not too tired? Yeah, thank you. I tried not to show my tiredness in front of Andrew, but it seems he always knew. He always took care of me, hugging me gently every time. About 2 years into this life, Andrew proposed to me. Naturally, I accepted his proposal, and we became husband and wife. I will make you happy, he said with a smile, a face I will never forget. After that, we finished greeting each other's families and registered our marriage. The first time I met my mother-in-law during the greetings, she was so kind, it reassured me. My father-in-law had already passed away. If there's anything, please feel free to talk to me about it, okay? Yes. Thank you so much. Surrounded by such kind people, I felt incredibly fortunate. It seemed like I could overcome any hardship. I was looking forward to our future life with excitement. And yet, to get wrapped up in something like that, I would come to regret marrying Andrew. Right after we got married, a shocking truth came to light. It turns out, Andrew couldn't do household chores at all. Sorry. I really can't do any housework. What, so how have you been living up till now? Well, as for meals, I'd buy them from deli and supermarkets, and when it comes to laundry, I'd take it to my parents' house once it piled up. So, I don't know how to use a washing machine. You're kidding. Why didn't I notice this while we were dating? Whenever I visited Andrew's place, it was generally tidy, so I never imagined he was completely incapable of doing household chores. From what he told me, perhaps his mother took care of cleaning the house. Or maybe he just tidied up things around the room to make it look presentable. That might be something only he knows. Since then, I started teaching Andrew how to do household chores. However, whether he didn't want to learn or couldn't learn, he was unable to do anything I taught him. Eventually, I gave up on teaching Andrew household chores and took on all of them myself. It was tough at times, but somehow, I got used to living like that. About 2 years after we got married, we had saved up enough money and bought a new single-family home. Living in a single-family home, as opposed to an apartment, allowed us to live more comfortably without worrying about noise. The neighbors were all nice, and our lifestyle became even more comfortable than before. Andrew and I each got our own spacious rooms, and it was nice to have more time to immerse ourselves in our hobbies. However, that also meant cleaning became quite the challenge. The apartment we lived in before buying the new house was quite small, so cleaning was relatively easy, but it's a different story with a single-family home. Since Andrew couldn't do any household chores, I ended up taking care of cooking, cleaning, laundry, etc. It seemed like, even with a single-family home, I was still doing all the housework. Andrew himself seemed to have given up on learning household chores, and no matter how busy I was with work and housework, he didn't help at all. It was after buying the single-family home I started to notice something odd about Andrew's behavior. He seemed distant, or something. He didn't pay much attention to me anymore. Even when I spoke to him, he seemed indifferent. He also seemed to be coming home later and later. Well, we've been married for a few years now, so maybe it's normal. Still, I couldn't help feeling lonely. Hey, what time are you coming home today? Don't know. Oh, okay. Oh, here, I made you lunch. Ah, sorry. More than anger, I felt a whirlwind of sadness and anxiety within me. Had I unknowingly done something to make Andrew upset? But no matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't think of anything. Well, Andrew hasn't complained about anything to me, so maybe I shouldn't worry too much. Eventually, I started to believe that this was Andrew's true nature. It seemed like the most straightforward way for me to come to terms with it internally. That would be a different story if he complained about the food being bad or the house not being cleaned. But there were several other frustrating things about Andrew. He would come home late without letting me know when he'd be back. He'd make me prepare lunch in the morning only to leave it behind, and despite knowing I would clean, he'd mess up the room as he pleased. Before I knew it, Andrew's laundry would often be scattered around the room. At first, I thought he must be tired and didn't nag him much. However, no matter how many days passed, Andrew made no effort to change his behavior. Having witnessed such scenes, I finally lost my patience and confronted him strongly. Hey, can you please stop? You mess things up thinking I'll clean it up. I work just like you know? It's already hard enough managing the housework on a regular basis. Could you maybe show a little consideration for me? Huh? Are you saying I don't care about you? Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. If you really cared, you'd take care of your own stuff more, wouldn't you? And when I went into your room to clean up, it's so dirty, I wonder how you can even sleep there. You say you come home late, but hardly ever let me know when. Don't you think that's a bit much? I unleashed all the feelings I had been bottling up at Andrew. But he didn't seem willing to listen to me seriously. I'm tired too. You're going to clean up, aren't you? And I've told you in advance I'd be home late, so that should be fine. You're just too uptight. Uptight? In the end, Andrew didn't listen to what I had to say. From that day on, Andrew became even more distant. Not only would he respond indifferently when I spoke to him, but he also started to ignore me. Cleaning his room or taking care of his things no longer elicited a word of thanks. I thought about abandoning the housework several times. But he would probably live just fine in a dirty room. On the contrary, I couldn't stand living in filth. The thought of enduring discomfort just to make a point was unbearable to me. After much consideration, I decided to continue doing the housework for my own sake. Over time, Andrew's behavior seemed to return to normal somewhat. But his indifference towards me remained unchanged. Should I be happy that he at least started telling me when he'd be home? Where did the Andrew I knew before we got married go? I had no idea he was hiding this side of him. If I had known, I could have reconsidered the marriage. I found myself living with stress from work and home every day. About half a year into this lifestyle, my work suddenly got busier with an increase in business trips. There were day trips as well as overnight stays, and my life became incredibly hectic. On top of that, I had to take care of the housework and look after Andrew. My burden was completely overwhelming. Perhaps seeing how burdened I was, Andrew's attitude began to change gradually. "Hey, Sally. Are you okay?" "What do you mean?" "You know, about the housework and work. Everything." "Well, yeah, I'm okay, but..." I was so surprised by the sudden concern that I doubted my ears. Andrew worrying about me? This was unheard of. I half expected it to rain spears tomorrow. After that, Andrew started to show concern for me more frequently. "You've been on a lot of business trips lately, haven't you? Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine. It's tough, but at least it pays well." "I see. If you say you're fine, then that's good." I wondered if he was hiding something or if he was genuinely concerned. Despite my doubts, it felt nice to know Andrew was worried about me. I was happy just about that fact. But, as usual, Andrew's return home remained late. "Hey, why are there so many days you come home late? Is it really that often?" "I've got a lot on my plate, too. Overtime, hanging out with the boss." "I see." Looking at the pay stubs, I could see he was getting paid for overtime. Going out drinking with his boss was understandable, to an extent. Still, it felt excessive. I had thought maybe Andrew was cheating. But I couldn't quite believe he would do something like that. Despite everything, somewhere in my heart, I still trusted him. I didn't understand why I was so convinced Andrew would never cheat. Even as my business trips increased, Andrew made no effort to do any housework. Unable to even heat up a ready-made curry, Andrew relied on convenience store meals or eating out when I was away. When I was gone for an extended period, he would ask his mother to come over. I had hoped he would learn to manage on his own, but that seemed like a foreign concept to him. I preferred calling his mother over to having the house get dirty. But that obviously increased her burden. "I'm really sorry for putting you through this because of my frequent business trips. It's okay, dear. It's not your fault. But we need to get that boy to learn some housework soon, for his own good. I can teach him housework anytime. It's okay. You're right. I'm sorry. I'll talk to him about it." "Oh, will you? Thank you." My mother-in-law's words were kind, but her tone felt somewhat cold. Of course, Andrew had no idea we were having such conversations. He continued to lounge on the sofa and watch TV as usual. "This show is really interesting." Forgetting that I was in the kitchen, Andrew would start talking to me. "What show?" "Oh, sorry. Were you washing the dishes?" Despite apologizing, Andrew showed no signs of remorse. At first, his attitude angered me, but now I've grown completely accustomed to it. It's sad, I think to myself. However, the day came when such a lifestyle would come to an end. I was offered a chance to go on an overseas business trip. It was a stressful job, but it had its rewards. I could have declined, but I decided to take on the challenge. The trip would last for 2 years. During that time, I figured Andrew could either go back to his parents' home or try his hand at managing the household chores on his own. The night I received the offer, I told Andrew about the trip, and he was surprised. "You're going to be gone for that long?" "Yeah." I could have said no, but I wanted to give it a try. "It's going to be a burden on you, I guess." It was certain we wouldn't see each other for a while. I would have been happy if he felt even a little bit sad about it, but Andrew didn't seem to harbor such feelings. "Got it. Good luck." "I'll try to manage things on my own," he said with a big smile. "Are you sure you'll be okay?" "Yeah, Don't worry. His reaction made it seem like he couldn't wait for me to leave. A few months after the overseas trip was confirmed, the day to depart finally arrived. Are you really okay? Yeah. Don't worry about me. If anything, I'll just ask Mom for help. I see. But, are you sure about the time? Oh, it might be getting late. I should go now. It seemed like Andrew really wanted me out of the house. He probably wanted some time alone. To be honest, I was quite upset. But there was no time to argue. I said my goodbyes to Andrew sincerely and left the house. For the next 2 years, I worked abroad. It was challenging, but I had a fulfilling life. This experience became a valuable part of my life, I was sure of it. While I was abroad, I kept in touch with Andrew regularly. Hearing that he was managing with help from his mother was a relief. Initially, we talked on the phone, but gradually we switched to emails. From his messages, I could tell Andrew was doing fine, so I wasn't too worried. 2 years later, my assignment ended, and it was time to return home. I was somewhat excited to see Andrew after such a long time. My steps were light with anticipation. Today was supposed to be his day off, so he'd likely be at home as usual. I wanted to ask about how he'd been living while I was away and talk about my life overseas. I was excited as I unlocked the front door. But that excitement quickly disappeared. A foul odor so strong it could twist your nose wafted through the air. The sheer abnormality of it made me break out in a cold sweat. It felt like something terrible had happened. I set my luggage down on the floor and began to search the house. Where was the source of the smell? Where was Andrew? My hands trembled as I opened each room's door. After checking each room, I finally opened the door to Andrew's bedroom. What is this? I couldn't believe what I saw. What on earth? There, to my shock, was the mummified body of Andrew. I couldn't comprehend what was happening in front of me. I need to call the police. The police. I immediately took out my smartphone and called the police. Within minutes, police officers arrived at my home. As they began their investigation, I, being the person who found Andrew, was naturally questioned. Given that we had been emailing up until just before the end of my business trip, there was a growing suspicion that someone must be involved. I've been on a business trip for about 2 years. When I came back, I found him like this. A business trip. I see. If the business trip seems suspicious, you can verify it with my company. I've just returned, so I can show you evidence like my plane ticket. Could we see that, please? I complied with the officer's request, providing the contact information for my company and my plane ticket as potential evidence. As a result, I was cleared of suspicion. But that raised more questions. Who had been replying to my emails? It was odd that Andrew didn't seek help from anyone until his demise. And it seemed likely someone from work would have checked on him at his home before things got to this point. I shared these concerns with the police officer and showed them the emails as evidence. Indeed. You've been exchanging messages up until recently. What does this mean? The more I think about it, the more my mind becomes muddled. The officers, too, found it suspicious and decided to conduct a full investigation. Once we had finished talking, I suddenly remembered Andrew's mother. I told the officer and immediately contacted her. Mother-in-law. Actually. What, Andrew? When I explained the situation, she trembled with shock. That can't be. Is it true? Hey. Yes. I've called the police and they're investigating now. Understood. I'll come over right now, my mother-in-law said before quickly hanging up. Given our homes were relatively close, she arrived at the house within 10 minutes. Andrew! Mom, please calm down. How can I calm down when my own son has passed away? My mother-in-law tried to push past the police officers to get to Andrew. Naturally, losing one's child is heartbreaking. Even I, who don't have children, can understand that. Sally! When did you find Andrew? Just now. I literally just got back and then. Oh no! My mother-in-law's eyes were filled with sorrow. After that, we received an explanation from the police officers about what would happen next. Throughout the conversation, my mother-in-law kept holding my hand tightly and stayed close to me. Her body was trembling. A few days later, the police informed us about the results of their inquiries. Apparently, a woman other than my mother-in-law had been entering and exiting our home while I was away. Just hearing that made it clear this woman was suspicious. Upon asking for a description, it turned out to be someone I didn't know. I didn't have any female acquaintances who would come and go from our house. Fortunately, Andrew hadn't locked his smartphone, so I checked it immediately after speaking with the police. That's when I saw one woman's name. Kate Turner. The emails made it clear she was someone Andrew knew through work, but it seemed like their relationship went beyond just that. Meeting up. Movies. Drinks. It became clear after reading through the emails that Andrew and Kate had been having an affair. Words like hotel and date were scattered throughout various messages. Even during my business trip, she had been coming to our house and taking care of Andrew in various ways. This can't be. Did you find something? I told the police officer about Kate's existence and that she must be the woman who had been coming and going from our house. The officer agreed with my assessment after checking the email content. They decided to contact her directly to hear her side of the story. A few days later, the police got back to me. Apparently, Kate wanted to meet with me. Despite having an affair, she had the audacity to want to meet with me, Andrew's wife. I couldn't help but think such things, given everything that had happened recently. From what the police told me, it seems Kate is completely unrelated. This makes me even more curious about who had been sending me emails all this time. Okay. In a week, then. Amidst growing questions, I decided to meet with Kate. Maybe she knew something. I wondered what her thoughts on the affair were. I couldn't wait to learn the truth and looked forward to that day. A week later, I went to the designated meeting room and faced Kate. I expected someone who had an affair to lack common decency. But my preconceptions were quickly overturned. I am truly sorry. What? For having an affair with Andrew. For entering your home so many times. I know it's unforgivable. I'm really sorry. Kate immediately bowed her head as soon as we met. Well. Oh, sorry. No, it's okay. So, how did you and Andrew? I asked Kate how she met Andrew and what their relationship was like before it turned into an affair. As expected, she told me that they were in a supervisor-subordinate relationship. Kate was assigned as Andrew's direct superior. Initially, they were just colleagues, but their relationship gradually became more intimate, and they ended up having a physical relationship. She had been entering our house even during my business trip, taking care of Andrew. However, Kate then shared a shocking truth. But I didn't know Andrew had passed away. I only found out from the police. That's strange, isn't it? What happened at the company? Andrew quit the company over a year ago. He quit? Yes. He said everything had become too much to handle. It's hard to say, but Andrew wanted to divorce you and marry me. He said that with my salary, we could live comfortably without him working. I was at a loss for words at Andrew's selfishness. To think he planned to leave me for Kate. And then quit his job because they could live off her salary. I was slightly shocked to realize that Andrew was far more selfish than I had ever imagined. Thank you for telling me all this. No. But you didn't know he had passed away, right? When did you stop visiting the house? Over a year ago, I guess. Why? If Andrew wanted to marry you? My words came out harsher than intended. But Kate, undeterred by my tone, explained what had happened. For a few months after I went on my business trip, Kate was visiting our home every 5 days to take care of Andrew. Initially, she was excited, feeling as if she was experiencing a newlywed life. However, that excitement quickly faded due to Andrew's lack of life skills. No matter how much she nagged, Andrew wouldn't tidy up. Eventually, her feelings for him cooled off completely. And after breaking up with him, she stopped coming to the house altogether. By then, Andrew had already quit his job, and he repeatedly contacted her, wanting her to come back, wanting to start over. The messages were varied but consistently expressed a desire to reconcile. However, Kate no longer felt the same way and had been ignoring him. Eventually, the communications from him stopped completely. Since then, she had no idea what became of Andrew. I see. Yes. I'm glad I got to hear about what happened while I was away. Thank you. I'm really sorry. Kate seemed genuinely remorseful, apologizing repeatedly to me. While I could see her sincerity, whether I could forgive her was another matter. Fortunately, Kate offered to pay compensation, and I decided to accept her proposal. It was clear Kate wasn't significantly involved in the incident. But this only deepened the mystery. Amidst this, the police received credible information from a neighbor. Someone had seen my mother-in-law entering the house just a few days before I returned from my trip. With this eyewitness account, the police began to view my mother-in-law with suspicion. If that was true, she must know something. Thinking there might be something to it, I casually opened Andrew's smartphone to check his emails. Until now, it hadn't occurred to me that my mother-in-law could know something, so I never bothered to check her emails specifically. In hindsight, if I had reviewed all the emails from the start, perhaps things wouldn't have escalated this far. I went through each email. And one in particular caught my eye. "Were you feeling ill?" Around the time Kate broke up with him, leaving him alone, Andrew seemed to have fallen ill. Unable to seek help from either Kate or me, he reached out to his mother. But the response from my mother-in-law was curt. "You need to handle this on your own." She had said things that seemed to abandon Andrew. "I'm tired of caring for you. It doesn't matter what happens to you." It was hard to believe that my mother-in-law, who had always adored Andrew and was exceptionally saddened by his death, would say such a thing. But no matter how I looked at it, my mother-in-law seemed to be involved in some way. Seeing the email from my mother-in-law, my suspicion turned into conviction. After showing the police officers the emails saved on the smartphone, they decided to bring in my mother-in-law for questioning. The police contacted her, and a meeting was arranged at the police station for a later date. I was allowed to be present, so I decided to attend. On the day, my mother-in-law arrived at the police station looking somewhat irritable.
"Isn't the perpetrator caught yet? What about that woman? The one who was taking care of Andrew?"
"Please calm down." After being admonished by the police officer, my mother-in-law sat down and glared at us. The officer then explained about the neighbor's report of her frequent visits to the house and the emails that were found.
"A neighbor saw it? There's no proof of that. That woman is far more suspicious than I am."
"But you were entering the house until recently, weren't you?"
"Where's the proof?"
"Well, we've heard a lot from the neighbors. Not just one person, but many." "How do you explain that?" My mother-in-law was visibly agitated, breathing heavily and snapping at the police officer. Watching this, I couldn't help but become more suspicious of her. "Mother-in-law, do you really know nothing?"
"I don't know anything."
"Is that the truth? How long were you going to that house?" "I don't remember." "What about the testimony from the neighbors? Are you saying the police are lying? Or that the neighbors have conspired against you?"
"Yes."
"With all due respect, it seems unlikely that they would go to such lengths just to frame you. Do you have any reason why the neighbors would do that?" Despite clear evidence of her involvement, my mother-in-law continued to deny knowing anything. With testimonies against her, her refusal to admit anything was frustrating. I couldn't help but confront her aggressively. Initially, she continued to deny any wrongdoing, but eventually, she admitted a shocking truth.
"Yes. I abandoned Andrew. Are you happy now?"
Mother-in-law. It was just so annoying. It was somewhat expected, but it turned out my mother-in-law was the one who abandoned Andrew in his condition. For such a selfish reason. Annoying. I was tired of him always depending on me. Just when I thought he had finally married, he would find some reason to rely on me again. He never learned to do any housework, always leaving everything to others. I took care of him because I was his parent, but honestly, I didn't want to. Then, when he got a cold and asked me to come over, I saw it as an opportunity. So, I left him alone. Next thing, he had passed away. My mother-in-law calmly explained her feelings towards Andrew. But they were not the emotions a parent should have for their child, they were twisted.
"So, you were the one replying to my emails all this time?"
"Yes, that was me. I thought if suddenly there were no replies, you would worry. I knew it would come out eventually, but I thought it might buy some time." "You knew it would come out?"
"Of course. But then that woman Kate showed up. I thought maybe I could pin the blame on her, but it seems that was impossible."
My mother-in-law said, seemingly frustrated. I couldn't believe that my mother-in-law, who had seemed so fond of Andrew and had been more devastated by his death than anyone, would abandon him. While part of me found it hard to believe, I remembered something she had said before my business trip. We need to get him to learn some housekeeping, or I'm worried about the future. Perhaps she had already disliked Andrew from that time. That thought left me feeling incredibly disheartened. To think of pinning the blame on someone else.
Well, what choice did I have? I didn't want to get involved with the police. If Kate had taken all the blame, I wouldn't have had to be here. That's just too selfish. Maybe marrying me and my frequent business trips did increase your burden. But that doesn't mean you had to abandon him. Quiet. You can't possibly understand how I feel.
My mother-in-law lashed out at me as if venting years of pent-up resentment. But undeterred, I continued. I understand some of your feelings. Andrew never tried to learn housekeeping, always messed up the house. To top it off, he was unfaithful. I was honestly angry too. But there are things you shouldn't do, right? What you did is a serious crime. Aren't you going to have to live with that fact for the rest of your life? As I persisted, it seemed my mother-in-law finally began to grasp the gravity of her actions. She would have to live as someone who abandoned her son. How painful that must be. It will haunt me. Tears started to stream down her face. I did such a thing. Please, reconsider what you've done, I implored, and she weakly nodded in agreement. After that, she was taken to another room shortly after. Surrounded by police, my mother-in-law seemed smaller than ever as she was led away. Eventually, she was arrested for neglecting Andrew's body for an extended period. The specifics of her charges are yet to be determined as the case goes to trial. Hearing my mother-in-law's story, I couldn't help but feel some sympathy for her. I, too, was fed up with Andrew's behavior on numerous occasions. But there are limits to what is acceptable. Having done something irrevocable, I hope my mother-in-law truly reflects on her actions. After her arrest, I moved out right away. Somehow, I just didn't want to stay in that house any longer. Now, I live in a nice apartment, managing on my own. Doing chores for just myself is much easier. But Andrew's memory lingers in my mind. If this had been a divorce, perhaps I could have felt relieved, but to part ways like this. It makes me realize I did love Andrew after all. To distract myself from these unavoidable feelings, I throw myself into my work each day.